Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So today's state of the game, May 13th, was just completed, and the developers were able to bring a few more updates, talking about patches and talking about a few changes that will most likely be made. But the more important aspect that I wanted to discuss was today's PTS. Now, they shared some other things. The raid information has not yet been given, but there will be a PTS with patches that are going to be coming soon, but this PTS is going to be for PC alone. And the reason that they said it's going to be for PC alone is because, like we all know, trying to get a PTS settled for consoles is a little challenging. Even when they try to do it ahead of time, I've seen some of you in the comment section even tell me that it doesn't even provide them enough time to get things all approved and rectified and all that with Sony and Microsoft. So they're doing what they can, and they're going to bring this for, people to be able to test out. So many of you already have the Division 2 on PC, so you'll probably be able to jump in on the PTS if you wanted to. I think the part of testing the game is probably a daunting task, and PTS has always been the saving grace for even the Division 1. There were a lot of PTSs back then. So I know many people say, I don't want to test the game. Even me, myself, at one point, I was like, I don't want a PTS. I don't want to jump in there. But now I'm a lot more open to the concept because it seems like they have it more directed and focused to specific things, bugs, and even new, mechanics that they might be introducing to the game. Now, it is noteworthy, though, to understand that they're not going to be putting the raid on this PTS because they're supposed to be a world's first, challenge that goes on the consoles and even on PC. So the raid's not going to be coming there. That way somebody doesn't go figure it out on a PTS, and then that kind of ruins the entire challenge of its secrecy and its mechanics that are basically most likely unknown to us. And so this is something that is very important, and I'm glad they're bringing it back, actually, because I think it'll make a big difference now. Because especially with a lot of the downtime going on, hopefully, they get it back here, they get it in soon. We'll probably be able to have a little bit more hands on deck. That's another thing too. When you're trying to balance a PTS, it really is weird, because what if you don't have enough hands on deck to test things? And what if people that are able to test things are only limited to the time that they have to test them? That's where sometimes things will sneak through the PTS. But at least it is possible now for less bugs or less broken mechanics to actually slip through the game, and some of us, the players, have an opportunity to take a look at them before they actually make their way into the entire game's meta and the mechanics and all of that stuff. And then, something really interesting also happened. I remembered, and one of the reasons I watch State of the Game on YouTube is because when I go into the Twitch side, I get into arguments. I think I found a question from somebody who's actually, a viewer in this channel. They were talking on the State of the Game chat on Twitch. They were requesting for a nerf to Negotiator's Dilemma to about 10% or 10 seconds or something for PvP. And I was like, well, I don't think Negotiator's Dilemma needs to be touched at all, because, the last time that we talked about a nerf for PvP, well, it affected PvE, and that was True Patriot, and that was the gear set. Gear sets are supposed to be strong and powerful. And somebody also, chimed in and commented and said, well, Negotiator's Dilemma is not supposed to be able to hit an NPC and affect, a player. And I think those were two different conversations, but at the end of the day, still went on to see that a lot of the game's mechanics in PvE that are actually very good are sometimes bad for PvP. And it brings the question of, if PvP will never be separated from PvE in this game, then it's not going to make a lot of sense, because a lot of the community has different ideas on how they would like to see a lot of the mechanics in this game being applied in PvP. And another thing too that I got too from these folks that I was talking to was the sentiment that I always get was, oh, you don't play PvP, so go. In fact, somebody said go play Lincoln Memorial on Heroic. In kind of I don't know if it was a condescending way, but I laughed because it's like, that's why PvP in the Division is a joke. Because, people don't want to accept, differing opinions and different insights. Even though somebody's not playing PvP, doesn't mean they can't offer valuable insight. Because I have more hours, more playtime in Mortal Kombat 11 than I do in the Division. That's because I solely PvE in the Division, and I just go PvP in Mortal Kombat. And that PvP is able to give me enough playtime that I even have a YouTube channel that features it, because the game is just that interesting in its own side. And when they make a balance to that game, the balances are so minimal and so meted out. And even the PvE and the PvP side of the game is actually different. Like in Mortal Kombat 11, there are competitive modes where you can only go in with specific loadouts of abilities that you can use. Like you go in there and it's already pre-packaged for you, so you know what your odds are. And that's what people really enjoy. And people have said we need to go into a PvP mode where we don't have gear sets. We don't have all these outlandish skills. They do it in fighting games a lot. Now, yes, fighting games are different because it's a duel more than a surprise mechanic like the PvP in the Division 2. But it doesn't even, it doesn't negate the fact that those concepts in PvP are still enjoyable to a lot of people. And then you also have the PvE side of the game where you can fight against the AI and you can equip gear, you can equip augments that make your character more powerful, maybe like even take less damage and do more damage and be able to, use all kinds of different fun stuff. And these are, mechanics that are part of that game. So I don't see why the Division cannot benefit from those mechanics, but PvE and PvP have to have a stark contrast for that to happen. So when the conversations are going on and people are frustrated with PvP, I think it's because the main question needs to start at the point where PvE and PvP are separated. If not, we're going to continue to have a convoluted system, because guess what? We're going to have some more gear sets that are coming, and they're now starting to try to employ the PTS so that we could test it, not necessarily because of PvE, honestly, but basically PvP is most likely going to be the suffering, segment if these gear sets are broken and it's not caught on time. And if PvP and PvE were separate, then we wouldn't even have to worry about this. It will be easy to just make the tweak on the PvP side. I mean, make 2 dials on a more simplistic way anyways. And then whenever something is scaled out of hand in PvP, dial it back a little bit or remove it from the meta. I can understand the frustration. Imagine if you're, if you're in the dark zone, if somebody maybe like marks me and turns around and shoots, a big old enemy NPC tank. It will melt my health immediately, and I'll probably be running to a different direction. Maybe I'm running away from rogues and they mark me, and then, and they go shoot an enemy NPC and then that deletes my health. That would most likely be frustrating. But at the same time, that mechanic is so good in PvE where if you mark a series of enemy NPCs and you have a huge tank or a warhound or a big enemy NPC, you can use that enemy NPC to deal multiple damage factors to multiple enemy NPCs. This is where the PvE mechanics shine sometimes, but at the same time, they could feel detrimental in PvP. So I guess a lot of these conversations come into place. We'll see what the PTS brings. I just wanted to give a slight update on that because I thought that was the biggest highlight of everything. They talked about how time trials can be slightly frustrating because it revealed a lot of the weaknesses in the game. So I know a lot of people talked about the time trials. I don't like running them. It's just too much pressure. I like to enjoy the game. Why would I be the time trials? Yeah, whatever. Maybe they give something good, but nothing that I'm necessarily interested in, spending all that time trying to achieve and getting. And they spoke about how the time trials really did expose a lot of the broken NPC mechanics, because some enemy NPCs will go camp at the back, according to the developer, or some of them just shoot way too accurately and are jerks, and those things affect time. In fact, in one case, in Manning National Zoo, there's a problem in the invaded part of this. I don't know if they've put that as a time trial, but these warhounds will literally be sitting on the top of the building structure, and you can't hit them with your bullets. You have to use an oxidizer, and hopefully you have somebody on your team that has a strong skill build to be able to swap to an oxidizer and hit those things and hit them multiple times to chew off their health. That already is a time wasting factor. And the developers seem to be looking at this now, and hopefully they're addressing it very soon. Before I round up the video, I wanted to quickly also kind of tag back to something I'd mentioned about the separation of PvE and PvP, about the modes that I talked about in comparing things with Mortal Kombat. Even though it's like comparing apples to pineapples, it's the best example I have because that's a game that I'm heavily invested in, the PvP. If you look at the way they've done the PvP side of the game, they have the competitive mode and then they have what they call the casual mode. The competitive mode is you going in there with pre-built characters where they have the same move sets that have already been picked for them and balanced in that way. In fact, they use that in the tournament versions of the game. And then in a casual mode, you can actually go make your own builds. You can make outlandish versions of those characters, and all their move sets, well, with some exceptions, can be put together to build a character the way you want to, and you can actually play other people as well with that. So those two modes actually make it really fun. And even in the casual mode, you can even select the option to have the competitive variations of the characters actually be in the casual setting. And so with this, it kind of removes the discrepancy and makes balancing very easy. So they can take a balancing factor and just tweak it for a specific character without having to ruin the entirety of the game in that sense. And so what we've seen and what I've seen is the way this game's in balance is characters that were really weak have been receiving slight tunings in order to make them actually very strong. And then some characters that were discovered to be really strong received minor tweaks, and it didn't really affect the overall, viability of that character. And so I think if these measures are put in place, even though many Mortal Kombat 11, players are still like, enjoying their Mortal Kombat 10, just like we're always talking about how great Division 1 is, I still see some merit in how they've designed their competitive and PvP systems. And I think that Tom Clancy's The Division 2's developers can actually learn and adopt those mechanisms, because we have, basic systems that you can kind of say, okay, this looks similar here and this looks similar there, even though they're, different games. But that's basically my video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Thanks for watching the clip. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section about the PTS, about PvP and PvE, about the sentiment within the community. Right now, I feel like it's very important that we have these conversations, because once the conversations about PTS came out, I think that's where the developers are like, yeah, we need to do this, because, manpower right now may be a little low. The way they streamline things may be a little different. So it's time for them to bring the community into the conversation. I know many people will call it free testing, whatever it is. I mean, if they don't want to test it, that's fine. Some of us will be willing to actually get in there and kind of do the best we can and provide the feedback that we can. All right. Peace.